Mm, mm. What do they call it? Okay. All right, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to our Medicine Buddha practice, everyone. I hope everyone is doing okay. Um, Welcome to everyone who's new to this time together. This is Medicine Buddha, and this is a guided practice where we just kind of work with the teachings of the Medicine Buddha, which is derived from Vajrayana Buddhism. We're just going to be going through just simple practices, simple applications of the tradition of Medicine Buddha, mixed with some other stuff, as we do. So welcome, and as usual, you all have the option, if you choose, to add prayer requests or aspirations into the chat box. This is all optional. If you want prayers to be offered publicly by me in the practice, just kind of put that there. If you don't want them offered, just hold those prayers as we begin the practice as well. We've been focusing on prayer for a bit now. I think that really reflects just the space that I'm moving in to, or actually deepening into, which is just the ways in which prayer is becoming more and more an important practice for me. Even though in Tantric Buddhism, everything is a prayer, right? Movement is prayer. Practices are prayer. Chanting is prayer, But even more intentionally, what do I want to see in the world? And how do I give voice to that, and shape and color and form to these intentions that I most want to see happen in the world. Just the act and the practice of devotion is something that I am really moved by. I'm really just fascinated by devotion. I'm fascinated by my practice of devotion. I'm also really just fascinated by how we cultivate devotion. And devotion is trust. The root of devotion is trust. Is also love. I don't know which comes first, the trust or the love. Maybe the love comes first and then the trust. But it's the trust. And that trust is an opening, it's a vulnerability, it's an exposure. It's an exposure. We are exposing ourselves, right? And the feeling of that exposure. And what we're trying to do, and what really my major project in life as a teacher is trying to bring the ultimate and the relative together in practice. And if you don't get that about my Dharma, then you won't ever understand my Dharma, right? You won't understand that I'm trying to do both. At the same time, I'm trying to get free socially, and I'm also trying to get free ultimately. I'm trying to do both at the same time, and I try to bring both of those pursuits together as well. So if you're on the extremes of this, so if you're just in the relative and working in the relative, or you're just in the ultimate doing the ultimate, you won't understand the integration of the relative and the ultimate teachings. That essentially this expression of the Heart Sutra. One day I'm going to actually teach a course on the Heart Sutra. I know I keep saying how many courses I'm going to teach, but I can only teach one course at a time. So I'm teaching one course right now. But one day I'm actually going to teach a class on the Heart Sutra. But the Heart Sutra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form is no other than emptiness, emptiness is no other than form. And you have the Gate mantra, right, that evokes this idea of how we move into a deeper relationship in that intersection. I know I do keep saying that. I say it every day, actually. I spend part of my day telling someone every day that I'm going to teach something. I'm going to teach a course. I'm going to teach a course in the Heart Sutra. I'm going to teach a course in like ancestor practice. I'm going to teach a course in parapsychology. I'm going to teach a course in baking and cooking. So I love cooking and baking. Dreams and aspirations, right? That's what we're talking about. Dreams and aspirations. But I will. It's gonna happen. Someone put a prayer request for Lama Rod to teach a course in the Heart Sutra. But this form and emptiness, right? Which is the relative and the social. It's relative, it's the social liberation, it's ultimate liberation. And they're brought together, and it's hard. This is a hard union. It's a hard conversation. Not like a literal conversation, but bringing these two extremes together becomes a conversation, right? And it's difficult. Extremism is really hard, as we see in the world. Extremism is real easy. And it's real, I'll use the word lazy. It's very lazy. Extremism is very lazy, right? Because you don't have to think about the other extreme. You're just like, you're here, I'm in my extreme, I don't have to think about anything else, But when we come into the middle, then all of a sudden you have these two sides of something coming together. And there's a way that we have to be really diligent and active. It's a way that we can get comfortable in the practice. You can get comfortable because the intersection of form and emptiness, or the relative and the social, is a really uncomfortable place to be. It's uncomfortable on purpose because it's the vibration, you bring these extremes together, there's an energetic vibration that it won't let you settle, because these extremes are so opposed, and at the same time there's such reflections of each other. It's like bringing the same sides of a magnet together, right? And that the push, that energy field, the electromagnetic field, repels the two sides, so this is the price, when you're bringing these things together, and you feel like that. When you bring the magnets together, you feel that tension, the weightiness, the resistance. And I love doing that with magnets, because it's like magic. Anything that I can't explain is like magic. I'm a very medieval, indigenous mindset. It's like everything is brought about by spirits and energy. Anyhow, that's another thing. But bringing the teachings together right? You have to sit with the ways in which they begin to push each other away. The relative and the social, or the relative and the ultimate, begin to push each other away, and that's on purpose, because in that tension, that space that's being that where the space where the tension is, that's where we have to go and sit, and that's not fun, right? It's not fun to sit in that tension in between these magnetic fields, but that's where their practice is calling us to be. And it's hard to articulate, it's hard to hold, all of that, absolutely. But when you choose to go there and practice there, you have to know that you're choosing discomfort, right? When you go and you choose to sit within that field, that's pushing everything away, but you're going and sitting right in that field, it will be uncomfortable because you won't be able to take a break. You won't be able to rest. You will begin to see things, right? You'll begin to see things that people don't generally understand and don't get, And so people on one extreme, people in the ultimate space, they will say, what's wrong with you? This is a dream. It's an illusion. Why are you taking this seriously? And you say, yes, and, right? And then the people on the other extreme, on the relativist side, will say, well, this is all that exists. Everything is real. Like, why don't you take this seriously? Why don't you, how can you possibly say that there's an illusionary quality to this? Like, everything is real, and then you come and you find yourself in the middle and you hear these arguments coming. It's like, everything is an illusion on this side, everything is real, everything is illusion, everything is real. And then you say, but it's both. It's both real and it's not real. And what a beautiful statement to piss people off. How incredibly easy it is to have people not take you seriously when you start talking that nonsense. But extremism isn't in line with the core philosophy of Buddhism. Like, the core philosophy is the middle way. This is the middle way. It's both and. It's both. Even within we have to earn a realization of the ultimate for us to actually understand the ultimate. Like, we have to develop, we would say, pure view, or like this, like, one taste, like this you earn the insight. It's insight, right? You earn the insight into the ultimate. When you get the insight into the ultimate, then you've earned the insight into the ultimate. The insight into the ultimate is only learned by moving through the relative. The relative must be used as a doorway into the ultimate. Or another way of saying that, we have all these relative practices. Like, you have mindfulness and shamatha and dzogchen and mahamudra and vipassana and all these, meditation forms. These are relative forms that open the door into the ultimate. We have metta, loving kindness. We do benefactor practice, often in this space. Benefactor practice, love practices, compassion practices, gratitude practices, or relative practices that take the relative as material, as form, and that begins to build a bridge into the ultimate. This doesn't work the other way around. You can't come from, if you're in this body, in this realm, in this moment, you can't come from the ultimate. Well, you can't build a bridge in the opposite direction. Like you don't start in the ultimate and then come into the relative, and particularly where we're positioned as samsaric beings, as beings bound within the cycle of birth and rebirth. And over time, when you apply the practices and do the work, then the illusionary nature of things begin to reveal themselves, not so much as something you can see or touch or taste, but as a felt experience, as an intuition. When that intuition develops, then the relative becomes less claustrophobic. Like you may be in a tight space, but you begin to have this intuition that, but the nature of the stuff in this space, it's not as heavy, it's not as real, it doesn't feel so real anymore. Like you're connecting more and more to the dreamlike quality, the illusionary quality of everything. This is the skillful means of deity practice when we're working with wisdom deities. So wisdom deities emerge out of the wisdom of our consciousness. The spaciousness, the clarity, right? Wisdom deities are expressions of our clarity, of our most authentic, purest consciousness. Wisdom deities like Medicine Buddha, for instance, right? That worldly deities meaning deities that are not wisdom deities, but are just very powerful beings who abide in different dimensions that are aligned with our dimension, but they abide in different dimensions, but they can touch into this dimension, but they're not enlightened, but they're quite powerful. Those are worldly deities, right? Worldly deities can take on the expression of wisdom deities as well. But when we're practicing with wisdom deities particularly, right, deities that are expressions of our consciousness, expressions of our wisdom, our love, and so forth, these wisdom deities or the practice of wisdom deities, or really just in general, let me just use this phrase, the practice of deities within Vajrayana is a practice of learning to shape the nature and quality and texture of phenomenal reality through the mind, right? So when we're doing all this heavy visualization in the practice, what we're learning to do is develop agency over phenomenal reality. We begin to shape phenomenal reality through the practice of imagination. But this shaping is fueled by bodhicitta. So bodhicitta means this altruistic attitude of wanting to help people, wanting to help ourselves, wanting to help others. So when we give rise to Medicine Buddha and practices, what we're doing is not just imagining this wisdom being, which is just an expression of who we ultimately are, but we're also practicing developing agency over phenomena by learning how to imagine things and learning how to dissolve things. So in Vajrayana, we call that creation and completion, the stages of creation when we imagine something and then the stages of completion when we dissolve that. And what we're training in is learning how to shape reality, so we can learn how to dissolve maybe the obstacles that get in our way from achieving enlightenment. We start dissolving the hopelessness or the pain or whatever it may be. So these are just the fundamentals of tantric practice. Is very, it's not all the fundamentals, obviously, but these are just some of the fundamentals that we're working with. But there's a complexity, and the complexity again is the interplay of the relative and the ultimate. And again, using these profound tools of deities to help us to hold the space within this tension of the relative and the ultimate. And then life changes. Life changes, and what also changes is the body begins to change. The body is revealed to be, another expression of the illusion, but it's an expression of the illusion that we're also trying to embrace and come home to at the same time. But the body is a part of this illusion, and we understand that when we begin to imagine ourselves as the deity, as Medicine Buddha, or as Tara, or as Machig, or Chinrezi, and kind of like the Vedic Hindu side of things, they're not so fond necessarily of imagining themselves to be the deity. It's a tricky endeavor to imagine yourself as Kali. But not that you can't. But don't see this as permission for you to do that. And then over time, absolutely over time, the nature of the phenomenal world, the essence, the most authentic expression of the phenomenal world, it just begins to speak to you, begins to whisper to you. And it's not like a voice or anything, but there's a stillness. The nature of all phenomena is also an expression of stillness. And even within chaos, crisis, distraction, noise, whatever it is, the stillness of the nature of things can be quite clear. The stillness of noise, the stillness of busyness, the stillness of emotions, the stillness of any energy it's the same stillness that resonates from everything. You crack open or you move through the aesthetics of phenomenal reality, the sights, the sounds, the color, the drama, the excitement, the sadness, all the stuff that we get so wrapped up in, right? That's just a distraction. And once you are learn to hold the space for everything, then within that space, the stillness begins to resonate and calls you. It's like a snake charmer and a snake. It's like we're the snake, and then the essence of everything is the charmer, right? It's beginning, the stillness of everything begins to charm us. And we get pulled, we get drawn into the stillness. And it's not that everything begins to disappear, but everything begins to reveal its true nature to us. So just to experiment, to begin with, can you hear, feel, sense the stillness? You think that you're being drawn somewhere, but it's actually you're being drawn inward. Because the stillness is also radiating from inside of us. And when we talk about going inward to do this contemplative practice, we go inward, we draw our minds inward. Samadhi, for instance, meditative absorption, right? You go inward. It's not that we're actually going inward. We're just aligning our awareness with the reality of stillness. That stillness is within and is also without. It is inward and outward. And over time, what we're trying to do is learning how to trust that stillness, to trust that we're being cared for by the stillness. The stillness is the home of the deities, of the wisdom deities in particular. This is we would call this the birthplace. The stillness is held by the mother, the expression of the mother. When we talk about the mother, we have to move past our trauma around how we understand mother and mothering and our relationships to our mother. We have to move past that. It's understanding this cosmic, expansive consciousness of a stillness, an energy that is doing nothing but caring for us. In the stillness, everything is present. Everything is available. Everything is just, it's waiting. And it's not waiting for anything in particular, it's just waiting. It's just there. It's just being. In the heart of whatever chaos and crisis we experience, the stillness is always there. Even when we have no idea what the fuck is going on, it is always there. And for some of you have no idea what the hell is going on now. That's fine, because confusion is a really great place to start on the path. It's better to start with confusion than to start with thinking you know everything. So I wonder, in the stillness, as we begin to turn more into our formal practice, can you begin to reflect on all the beings who love you, all the beings who care for you, all your teachers and guides and mentors and advisors and elders, all of your deities and gods and goddesses, your ancestors, the ones who are trying to help, who are trying to love you. Can you begin to summon those beings who deeply love you, who want you to be free? Can you summon them from the stillness? Can you call the earth into the space to hold you, to ground you, to support you? Can you call your body into the space? Can you summon your physicality to be present here? And even in the stillness, we all should begin to summon the great healer, Medicine Buddha. And we say, welcome, welcome. Can you allow Medicine Buddha to just take whatever form, whatever shape feels appropriate? Don't even think about it. Don't even think about forming or shaping or imagining anything. Just say welcome. Welcome to the consciousness, the love of the great healer. Because the great healer is an expression of who you ultimately are. So when I sit in the stillness surrounded by all the beings who love me, calling into the space the great healer, in my mind, what I'm reflecting on and gazing into is just the most authentic expression of who I am, beyond the bullshit, beyond the chaos, beyond the violence, beyond all the ways in which we fail and struggle. Beyond all of that, I am looking at my most awakened, authentic, loving, compassionate, powerful, and fierce self. And I'm asking this expression of myself as the healer to love me in return. We'll transition into our opening mantra, Minla Sange Kino Soha, O Medicine Buddha. Tonight we're going to translate it as Medicine Buddha, please gaze upon me. Medicine Buddha, please gaze upon me. Please look at me. Medicine Buddha, please look at me. And we'll begin. Minla Sange Kino Soa. Minla Sange Kino Soa. Minla Sange Kino Soa. Let's hum it together a few times. We imagine being surrounded within the stillness by all the beings who love us, and the great healer, the medicine Buddha, as an expression of our most awakened self in front of us. We don't have to see anything either. We can just sense this, or at least just say, even though you may not feel anything, that I am surrounded by love and this awakened, healing consciousness that's ultimately radiating from my own experience. We begin to imagine that all these beings begin to radiate the energy of care into the space around us. And this energy can feel like one time in our lives or another situation in our lives where we felt deeply cared for and loved and seen and validated. That's the same energy that we imagine being radiated from our benefactors into the space around us, and we feel ourselves being surrounded and wrapped by this energy. We have to know and understand that actually we're always being held by this energy. We're always being wrapped in this care, in this warmth, in this light, however you're experiencing it. It is always accessible for us, no matter what we're going through. Even in our most loneliest moments, including the moment of our death, of our transition from this realm into the spirit bardo realm, we can connect to to this love that is ours, that is for us. Can you trust that? Can you be with that? Can you sit with this? Moreover, can you begin to drink deeply through every pore in your body from this well, this spring, this ocean of care that's being shared with us? Do you feel your body drinking deeply from this care? Every pore, every opening of your body expands and drinks in this energy of care. And you're imagining becoming so deeply saturated with this energy. Can you just swim, wade through this energy of care? Like it's just like water, like you feel the water, the depth of this care, and you're drinking it in because you're thirsty. Can you drink this in? As we're deeply drinking in this care, I will begin to offer the prayers on our behalf, on behalf of the community, offering these aspirations, these intentions into this ocean of care, into the awareness of all the beings who love us, asking them to continue to act on our behalf to benefit those we're praying for, including ourselves if we're offering prayers for ourselves. Letting go and asking for help. So we begin by offering prayers for my mom's dad, who is doing okay, but has been diagnosed with prostate cancer. May he experience and know the deep love that he is, and feel the love of both ancestors and descendants and future ancestors, held even within complexities of harm he has both received and caused. We offer prayers for my willingness to acknowledge my strength, prayers for everyone navigating grief, prayers for Jerry and Michael, who are both struggling with illness, prayers for a new friend who just got out of the psych ward and fears that she will never feel better. May her suffering be eased and her path forward become clearer. Prayers for healing for my mother, Carol, currently in a geriatric psych unit. Prayers for my friend Ellen, who passed from COVID a few weeks ago. May she be protected in the bardo. Prayers for my increase in true self-compassion and self-kindness and compassion for others. Offering prayers for my son, Jamie, that he finds what he needs to find energy and healing. The same for my daughter, Hollister, and her husband, Andy, that he can have the vaccine without a bad reaction. Prayers for Lama Rod, for his incredible teachings, for his health and well-being, to continue offering his teachings. Prayers for Songbird, that she may continue to love herself, find forgiveness and peace while healing and transforming her trauma. Prayers for our beloved dead. Prayers for Jerry, whose wife has died. For Peter, recovering from cancer surgery. For Linda, who had a stroke Saturday. For D and K, whose son died. For Jay, whose dad died of COVID. Prayers for all working on the relative and the ultimate working for justice. Prayers also for Vivian's dad, who's passed into the bardo. Prayers for Paul, who's close to passing into the bardo as well. Prayers for St. Marion Humphrey, the Black Texas middle school student who was so horrifically bullied. Prayers for Leah, who has passed on, and for her 2 children as they experience her death. Prayers for ancestral healing. Prayers for healing of my eyes. I need to have surgical procedure soon. Prayer requests for myself and the healing of my childhood traumas. Prayers for Molly, the little girl who died recently. Aspirations to let go of my pettiness. Prayer requests for my parents, to bring them softness, to help them forgive themselves, to help them release judgment. And prayers for me to help me work with my anger around their homophobia and transphobia in ways that are truly beneficial to us all. And again, for myself, as I grieve the loss of a relationship that was very precious to me, that I've lost because of my parents' beliefs. Prayers for Elsie Wright, 96, with spine cancer, and her loving daughter Joyce. For Thumb Cranner, Aviva Keller, Elisa Smith, Anna Gottlieb, and Bardo, and their parents and their loss. And for myself, probably going to need shoulder surgery relatively soon. Prayers for all of our children. Prayers for my ability to feel connected in isolation. I offer the prayers that are still unspoken by our community, that all of our prayers are lifted into this field of benefactors around us as we sit within the stillness, that we continue to be cared for and loved by our benefactors and by the great healer. As we move into our main mantra practice, we continue to imagine deeply drinking in this energy of care, and also taking a step further, if you choose, to begin to imagine that as we are drinking deeply into this care, this energy of care, that we're also drinking, absorbing this energy on behalf of all those we've offered prayers for. That our energy that we're taking in begins to naturally restore those we're praying for, to bring about what we most want to see for their lives in this moment. O te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, raza sumongate soha. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, raza sumongate soha. Te ata begenze, ma begenze, raza sumongate soha. Te ata 수문가대 소아 제아다 운배견제 배견제 마배견제 라서 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 수문가대 소아 운배견제 배견제 마배견제 라서 수문가대 소아 제아다 운배견제 배견제 마배견제 라서 수문가대 소아 begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. Theata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umgane soa. And returning our attention to the space around us, to our benefactors, to the great healer emanating in front of us. Begin to imagine that everyone, all beings begin to dissolve into white light. We begin to imagine that this white light is absorbed directly into our heart centers. Again, returning our attention to the stillness, resting within the stillness. Allowing the thoughts and emotions to pass through our minds like clouds passing through the sky. Letting our awareness be wide, open, spacious, fluid, clear. So slowly we begin to come back into our space, shifting our attention down to our seats, noticing the weight of our bodies making contact with the seats. if you're feeling a little bit too spacey, maybe too much in the space and emptiness, not only come back to the seat, but just begin to just gently tap yourself, just gently, just tapping the arms and hands, the head, just like gently reminding yourself to return back to the relative. And then we turn our attention to Shantideva's prayer, which you'll find in the chat box. And we'll recite this 3 times to dedicate the energy, the merit of our time together. We begin. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all the sick beings into the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and all the great elements, such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they all pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all the sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. And finally, may I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all the sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. Hey, thank you all so much for your practice today. So I'll just answer this question here. Um, do I have any advice on how I can apply the practice of living between ultimate and relative to the journey I'm on with my parents regarding the homophobia and transphobia? I found my practice to be a source of solace for handling emotions, but when it becomes dogma against dogma, I find myself getting contracted around all the frustration. My parents and my mom especially clings to Christianity, well, to Christian dogma. And I'm feeling at loss about how to cope with this and still be in relationship with them and accept them for who they are, even though I desperately want them to change and I really want to be fully loved. Yeah, um, I think when we're working in these really tough relationships, with immediate family like this, um, I think sometimes, well, definitely all the time, I think it's so important that we turn the attention back to experiencing love for ourselves by using these practices, using um, benefactor practices, metta practices, loving kindness practices, like the one we did tonight. Um, I think also compassion is a part of this too. So much of my practice of working with folks like this that I have to be around. It's just like realizing that they're in all this suffering too, and they're using maybe their religion and spiritual practice to create meaning for them. And maybe that from what we see, the work that they're doing, is not actually expansive, is actually quite contracting for them. And there's a way that we can recognize that suffering for them, and also protect ourselves by saying, what, I see what you're moving through, and I notice and am aware of what I am needing out of the relationship, but I also recognize that perhaps you don't have the capacity to offer fully everything that I need. And so how do I begin to gather these resources for myself in a way that I don't find myself just solely depending um, on others around me? This again, this has been a factor practice for me. When I was going through this for myself, it was like, how do I turn my attention to the love of people around me, or beings around me who are always, who are already naturally trying to love me? And how do I connect fully to that and begin to really drink deeply from that? Um, how do we mourn the the realization that no matter how hard we practice, there are people who will not change to meet our needs? How do we hold that brokenheartedness in our practice? How do we mourn that? How do we begin to also just really reflect on the ways in which our desire for people to change becomes weaponized against us, actually? And that desire goes unmet, but we still maintain that desire when there's actually very little evidence that that desire will come about. How do we let go of that and just say, you know what, you're doing what you can, and what I can do in this moment is also do what I can, and rely on my practice to hold me even through relationships where I feel I'm not getting emotionally met by those around me, or by those I'm in a relationship with. I think often I find myself these days talking about, how do you let go? Um, this is a period, this apocalypse that we're moving through, where everything is so disrupted. This is a moment, a period where we're having to ask ourselves, what do we need to let go of? And I'm not talking about letting go of relationships. I'm just talking about letting go of these expectations that we have for relationships to be different, when we have very little evidence that it will ever be different. And again, how do you hold the space for that disappointment, and how do you grieve that disappointment that we have to face? But this is, we talk about the queer and trans community, we talk about the community. This is one of the consequences that we face in the community when we choose to be our most authentic self, is that when we make this choice to be ourselves, everyone will take it so personally around us, and it's not about anyone else except for us. So when we make our choices to be ourselves, we're also having to hold the space to some extent of how people around us make our liberation about a personal insult against them. And you get to this point where it's like, I can't, I can't do that anymore. I can't take responsibility for your disappointment because I'm choosing to be myself. It has nothing to do with you. Even if you are my parents or siblings or whoever. This is why we have our chosen family. We choose our families that are loving us unconditionally. And it's hard, and also it's hard to expect unconditional love from people who don't unconditionally love themselves, too. Like you're expecting people to give you something they don't even know how to give themselves, and that's not how any of this works. I can only offer people what I'm offering myself. If I don't understand what unconditional liberatory love is for myself, chances are, quite frankly, that I'm not going to give it to anyone else. Sometimes the conditional love that we get from our loved ones is an expression of the deep suffering and self-hate that they themselves are going through. And when you struggle to love me, I know that you're struggling to love yourself. I mean, this is how you live in the intersection of this teaching. It's not about things working out. It's not about getting everything fulfilled. It's about touching into the actuality of how things actually are. Excuse me, to how things are, period. Not how I want them to be, but how they are. And how do I begin to live in a relationship to how things are really happening? And then you let your heart break. And then you ask your benefactors to help you hold the brokenheartedness. You let that brokenheartedness lead you into the very nature of reality, which is also being led into the stillness of this reality. It's easier to get into the stillness when you stop fighting the brokenheartedness. You just let it happen. You let it be. The heart opens, it breaks. It's in one way I imagine as a broken heart, but like also I imagine in my mind the broken heart being a flower that blossoms, something that blossoms. It's an opening. Like my heart is opening to the love that's always naturally being radiated towards me. It's a Jewish teaching. It's an old Jewish teaching from a rabbi or someone. Um, I don't know if it's actually written down, but anyhow, it's from Judaism, and there's this teaching story that says God lays the teaching on our hearts, and then when our hearts break, the teaching sinks in to the brokenheartedness. So essentially, we don't ever learn until our hearts break, and there's space for the teachings that have been laid on it to sink down into it. That ultimately, at the end of the day, what I really have to do is to love myself. So the deeper you get into the teachings, the deeper you get into all of this, the more you begin to see, the more you begin to realize and understand. Um, And it creates this, I don't know what word I would use, but it's, you just get real. I guess you just get real. And it's no longer this fantasy, but you say, oh, this is how things are. Yeah, this is what's happening. You're like, okay. And it's not so overwhelming, it's not so intense anymore. I see the suffering of people. I understand the suffering of people because I understand it for myself. And I know what to expect and not to expect. We we disrupt the violence that comes from not being accepted and understood. We disrupt that by cultivating a fierce, intense experience of self love. That's how we tend to ourselves in the world. When the world refuses to love us, then we love ourselves. I've been watching a lot of like queer and trans shows. And not that that's special. I'm always watching a bunch of queer and trans shows. Um, and I just in the past, well, on Saturday I finished watching Veneno on HBO Max. I mean, that Veneno, the story of Christina Rodriguez, right? Just about her life, even though it's kind of like, kind of fantasy, kind of real, but it's a real thing. She spent her life just wanting to be loved, primarily by her mother, and that never happens. And the impact that had on her life of making these choices, just wanting to be loved by someone, but ultimately being loved by her mother, it would just never happen. It just drove her into one crisis after the other. And at some point, you have to stop and say, "I'm not going to get this from you." You know? So how do I just do the hard work of loving myself? And when I do that hard work, I have to sit with the trauma, the brokenheartedness. I have to sit with the anger, the resentment. And how do I entrust this really hard work into the care of beings who are always around me trying to love me? How do I entrust this care to the mother, to Tara, to Nelson Buddha, to the ancestors, to the queer and trans ancestors, who many of them never had the love and care and support of their families, but who are still present in a disembodied form, trying to love those and trying to help us have a different experience than what they experienced. And I just finished watching 2 weeks ago, It's a Sin as well, and I cried for 2 days. After I finished that, I cried straight for 2 days. Um, just thinking about, reflecting on the ways that the lack of love contributed to the suffering of so many people. The lack of love from families contributed to this intense suffering of so many people that were dying in the AIDS epidemic. Ways families would abandon people, mostly gay men, but all people, men and women, and trans and gender nonconforming folks, but overwhelmingly men, as we know, back in that time. And how many people died alone, you know? We have to love ourselves. We have to commit to loving ourselves when no one else is loving us. And I can only say that because I've had to do that. And I'm not saying I've always been loved. I've not always realized that, but I've always been loved by people in my life. But there are times in my life where I've been so angry and hurt that I've just like blocked that love because I couldn't bear that love from certain people. But what I had to understand too was that I couldn't, for me, I couldn't accept the love from others around me until I started loving myself, started sitting with myself, allowing myself to be, holding space for the pain, holding space for the trauma, and just saying I'm okay. Regardless of how I'm always being told that I'm wrong or a sin or that I'm going to hell, which is what I grew up with, regardless of all that, I'm okay. You know, regardless of what my family says. My family still has lots of opinions, about how I live my life. And it's okay. It's at this point in my life, I'm like, but I'm able to feel the love, even in the midst of criticism and judgment. I can still feel the care and love, and I'm okay. And that's the consequence of doing these practices for so long. You begin to naturally tune into the ways that the world is trying to love you, how the earth is trying to love you, the wind is trying to love you, right? The sunshine is loving you. Random people on the street are trying to love you, right? That your teachers are trying to love you, that your communities are trying to love you. You just begin to tune into it and you're like, oh my God, there's a lot of love here. And I've never tuned into it because I've been so fucking pissed off and hurt and resentful and angry. Anger is, as you know, I have a positive understanding of anger, but anger gets in the way as well. When we get so wrapped up in it, it gets in the way. Like even with anger, we have to start tuning into the stillness that's radiating, from anger. Again, it's the coming together of the ultimate and the social, the relative and the ultimate. You know, yes, anger is important, but anger is an illusion at the same time. Putting that together, I move into anger, and anger is showing me what it really is. So, in any case, I'm gonna let everyone go. Thank you so much, everyone, for your practice, for your work. I'll be offering the Wednesday night talk again. I'm going to talk more about devotion and trust and everything. Um, we're going to start. We're going to start a little later on Wednesday because for those of you who are in Love and Rage with me, the course we have Wednesday night practice, and then right after practice, I'm going to head right into this session for Buddhist Pasha. So I'll be 30 minutes late. So we'll start at 8:30, but at 8 o'clock we'll just do. Everyone just does their own practice until I get there. Um, and everyone, please be well. Um, pray for the world. Pray for all of us still moving through COVID. Everyone who's being still impacted and contracting COVID. Offering gratitude for those of us who are getting vaccinated as well. remember all those we've lost to COVID. We still continue to pray for their passage through the Bardo spirit realm. Pray for everyone we can possibly pray for right now. Pray for Brittany, pray for Megan. Keep these prayers going. Thank you, everyone. I'll hope to see you in a couple of days. All right. Be well.